what is robotics as a service?
Fundamentally speaking, anything that's as a service means that you're shifting the model from an ownership where you buy some asset outright from the get-go into sort of a lease or rental type of model that involves a subscription. So the primary difference is that when you own the asset, just as is the case when you buy a house, for example, you're responsible for everything that goes on with that asset. You need to handle maintenance. You determine how it's used on a day-to-day basis. The sale essentially typically ends your relationship with the seller. Whereas if you're renting, again, if you're renting and your sink breaks, you contact your landlord and they take care of it just as you would contact your service supplier for whatever X as a service product you're receiving. And they would offer you everything from maintenance to updates and upgrades. And it changes the dynamic of how you utilize the asset.
And so, how are we seeing this across to industrial use cases lately?
We are seeing a shift in, especially when you think of some of the more expensive assets that are used in industrial settings, like vehicles, which is our focus here at Syngent, is that those are high capital expenditures. When you need to buy a new vehicle, typically it's also just not one vehicle. You typically need to buy a fleet of multiple similar vehicles. That is a very large capital outlay, and it's a difficult buying decision, and it's one that has its imperfections. Just as it's been touted in autonomous consumer vehicles, we buy cars. They're typically the second most expensive asset we buy after our house, and on average, each of us utilize our vehicles at a 4% utility rate. If you do the math on that, you're getting very poor bang for your buck, especially when you consider that all of these vehicles are depreciating assets. Now, that's not dissimilar to what we see in industrial applications. The difference is that we're probably going to have higher utility rates than 4% in industrial settings, unless you're buying an oddball machine that only does a very specific task that's used, once in a blue moon within a workflow. So the numbers are a little bit more in your favor, but you're also, now we're talking B2B, we're talking enterprise operations. You're much more cognizant of your bottom line than a consumer who needs to buy a car to get to work.